This is where the writers and I start to part ways in terms of preference. And I will say here that these views that I'm going to express, they're obviously subjective. They're just my own opinions. And some people are going to hate them, but I need to get them out of my system, okay?
Somebody's about to get hit by the bus.
Yeah.
On this one.
So the moment Clive heals Joshua's body is a powerful moment. I was totally captivated, right? Now, that said, just about everyone knows, and especially every Final Fantasy fan knows, that the Phoenix rises again. Mythology, previous Final Fantasies, even Harry Potter points to this fact. Phoenix Downs, which are items in pretty much every Final Fantasy game up until now, although they're not prevalently used in 14, which has the same creators as 16. But anyway, Phoenix Downs are one of the most well-known items you can use in most Final Fantasies. And they're literally shaped like a phoenix feather, and their sole purpose is to bring people back from the dead. How much more powerful would it have been if during that moment when Clive intended only to heal Joshua's body, he healed all of Joshua, and Joshua rose again? Would that not prove the real power of the Phoenix, and even more importantly, show the power and ability of their brotherly bond? I mean, after defeating Ultima, Clive could have raised Joshua right then and there, and I would have been on my feet giving this game a passionate standing ovation because I love Joshua. I wanted the guy to live, and I don't think it takes away from his willingness to sacrifice himself by bringing him back to life. He still was willing to make that sacrifice, and I think it would have made logical sense. Yeah, so they mention once earlier in the game that even the Phoenix can't bring people back from the dead, right? So they throw that into the dialogue so that we understand it. But what if he can, and they just don't know it, right? Clive took Ultima's power too, remember? So didn't Ultima bring life to everybody? I mean, wouldn't it have made sense for Ultima's power that Clive absorbed to lend that extra, maybe creation type strength to Clive's power of the Phoenix? I mean, there are so many ways to justify it. I just really wanted that warm reunion after hope was lost. I wanted that embrace. I wanted that miracle after all of this sadness, right?
So I think you actually got it though.
Because you don't think he's dead?
I don't think he's dead.
But I don't know. I mean, I think he's dead. I think Joshua is dead. I think there was that moment where there could have been this like mind-blowingly good scene. I mean, it was already good, but it could have been like explosion good. But instead, Joshua stays dead. And he doesn't have a hole in his chest. Yay for that. But he's still dead.
Everything you said, I agree with it 100%. Here's where I think, again, it's one of those things where like the writers left some stuff in there and it's up for our interpretation. And so we're kind of like trying to, I admit here, I'm a little bit grasping at straws on this one, but here's what I'm thinking.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm so curious.
So Clive comes back and he attempts to heal Joshua. And so Joshua's fixed up like brand new. And yes, you definitely got the impression that it didn't work because he walked away and said something like, well, I guess that Ultima's power is too great for a vessel to wield.
It seems Ultima's power was too great for this vessel all along.
But Joshua was the Phoenix the entire time, right? And then immediately, like it hit me. Oh, the Phoenix, Joshua, Yeshua. It makes sense, right? It's all tying together. That's why he has that name. And then I thought, oh, maybe this is how the resurrection happens. But remember, the resurrection doesn't happen right away. It's delayed by a certain amount of time depending on...
But this is the game.
I know.
If that's a thing, they need to show the thing. You can't just like...
So we'll talk about that when we get to the post-credit scene.
Oh gosh, okay.
But...
I got a few things to say there too.
That's how I got back to it. I was like, okay, now it all makes sense. So I actually think...
Oh, because the book...
I actually think Joshua did survive this.
And that's when he wrote the book?
That's when he wrote the book.
I did wonder about that.
And it ended up legend, if you want to call that, much later. So my hypothesis is that when Clive ended it, which I know you're going to talk about in a second, that, I don't want to call it reset everything, but
interesting.
It essentially gave Joshua back his life.
Okay.
In other words, he resurrected, rose from the dead, the whole Phoenix thing. And then he wrote the story. I don't think he actually wrote the story. I think Clive wrote almost all of the story, and then Joshua wrote the ending to it.
And then took full authorship credit?
Well,
Because it says it's written by him.
we only saw the cover, right?
Yeah, that's true. Interesting. Okay. The book thing.
I think he lived. I do think he died.
But then he rises again.
But then he resurrected and ended up living.
But then what? They're going to make a sequel? Is that because they can't just play that out in a DLC that's like a 5-hour episode?
Well, see, that's the weird thing. I don't know that the DLC is going to be a continuation of the story.
Right. It's probably like origin stuff
or like playing it from different characters' perspectives.
Interesting.
Or the thing that would be super interesting is like, there's clearly a massive gap between when Ultima showed up in that arc and where the story starts, like thousands and thousands of years, right?
To see people like start out Akashic and then basically morph into free will consciousness.
Right.
People.
There's a whole like backstory that can be told there, right? Because I feel like this ending that we're talking about right here is the actual ending of the story. And then the book gets handed down. It's now legend, right? So you now have all that. I don't think there's much to say between the ending of the game as we know it now and the post-credit scene. It just seems like that's kind of a reset period for humanity.
I think it is a reset period. And I'll make some arguments as to why I think we still should see parts of it. But that's interesting. So percentage-wise, Joshua dead versus not dead.
I'm about the inverse of Clive. I'm about 80% sure he lived, and 20% is that he's still dead.
So you really believe Joshua? Okay. See, I'm like 90% he's dead, 10% he's still alive. Though the book thing is making me think twice. But either way, like, even if he were still alive, I wanted to see it in that moment. I wanted the reunion between Clive and Joshua. I hate when games and movies and series skip over these incredibly impactful moments in stories, right? Like, I wanted to see that.